Welcome to the Bootleg Zones. Ghostbusters came out at the right time and was popular enough to have hit a lot of the more obscure media formats in addition to the ones you probably know. So let's start our look at these Ghostbusters formats with the one that was the most commonly used during its first home video release. And I actually have two of this first release of Ghostbusters on VHS because I don't know. The first home video releases of Ghostbusters were put out in 1985 by RCA Columbia, just 1 year under its theatrical run. The Red Border Ghostbusters VHS is probably the first thing most people would think of when they think of Ghostbusters on this format. And I think a lot of people associate the Red Border specifically with Ghostbusters, even though it was used for pretty much all the RCA Columbia releases around the time. I guess they just thought you would like it if all your RCA Columbia VHSs kind of fit in with each other. And it's kind of funny here that the VHS box and the actual cassette don't really agree with each other on what this movie's rating is. The box tells us that this is regular PG, while the cassette says it's actually PG-13. Hopefully that wasn't a difference maker for you. So when Ghostbusters hit home video, this was during the format war between VHS and Betamax video cassettes. The Ghostbusters Beta box actually has the Ghostbusters logo beveled out a bit. And opposed to the cassette just sliding out from the bottom like with the VHS, with the Betamax there's a little flap on the side where you have to pull it out from. Though the earliest Ghostbusters VHS releases were also like this. So as you can see, Betamax tapes were a bit smaller than VHS's. And you only got to see one end of where the tape spooled up on the oh no, Beta. My Ghostbusters Beta tape is branded Fuji, which is kinda interesting as the back of the box says they're all made by TDK. The TDK mark on the box is also something true of the first VHS releases of Ghostbusters, but they took that off a little bit later, and this Ghostbusters VHS doesn't have any specific branding on it. So it's kind of funny they just left it on the Beta box when it's a Fuji tape. My Ghostbusters Beta tape has a front label while the VHS has nothing, which is why Beta was better. Also, Beta was a bit better quality than VHS, but that didn't help it win the format war. By the time Ghostbusters 2 came out, you could tell Beta was kind of on its last legs. Instead of coming out in boxes which, were actually made for them, they're just coming out in VHS boxes with stickers on them that said Beta. So, if you were still into Beta at this point, you had to know the end was near. And since these, stickered up VHS boxes weren't really the right size for Beta tapes, you just kind of get some crappy insert filling to try and make it sort of hold the Beta tape alright, but these things weren't really the greatest setup, and the tape would often slide around a lot. So in 85 and 89 respectively, we got Ghostbusters and then Ghostbusters 2 on Laserdisc. Laserdisc is of course the giant CD looking format that was around a lot longer than I think most people are really aware of. And you can see me recording through it, hi! So yeah, there was a good reason why CDs were the compact disc. But despite the Laserdisc just looking like a giant CD, it's not digital like CD, it's actually an analog format like a VHS. Now there were actually two different types of Laserdisc, the CLV and the CAV. These two different types were also known as extended play and standard play. The big difference being that the standard play or CAV Laserdisc could offer a lot more playback features than the regular CLVs. This is a bit like the different record modes on VHS's, the SP, EP, or LP. And these kind of had the same trade-off as the higher quality meant less time per disc. So to watch Ghostbusters on CAV, you needed 2 discs because these only held 30 minutes per side. So you'd really have to be into Laserdisc to want to watch it this way, because not only would you have to change the disc once just to watch through Ghostbusters, but you'd have to flip it unless you had a player that would flip them automatically. The regular CLVs held 60 minutes per side, which meant you still had to flip it at least once to watch the movie, again unless you had a player which could play both sides. But a lot of the people who were really into Laserdisc really wanted the special features that a CAV offered, which had way more playback options, including in reverse and perfect freeze frame. Alright, now here's where we start to get a bit more obscure with the video formats that Ghostbusters was released on with the CED video disc. CED stood for Capacitance Electronic Disc, which is kind of redundant when you read this thing out as Capacitance Electronic Disc Video Disc. So what exactly is a CED? Well, it's a movie on a vinyl read by a stylus, much like an audio record. But unlike a record, the CEDs were housed within this kind of cartridge and would only come out once the player grabbed this front end of it, took the disc out, and then you would just have the empty cartridge to put back in once you were done watching the movie. See, the CED player would just kind of push in these tabs like this and grab the front end of the cartridge along with the disc here. And yeah, like I said, it's like a vinyl record inside there, but it's kind of shinier than most. Ooh, CED, gaze into its pointlessness. Anyway, that was a good viewing of Ghostbusters. In it goes. So the reason the CE discs are housed within a caddy instead of just being in a sleeve like a regular audio record is because dust settling on them would actually cause them to skip. The CE discs were made by RCA, but it took them 17 years of research and development to actually put these out on the market. And that's one of the major reasons why this format just kind of came and went so quickly. I mean, you had better options by this point. CEDs were only kind of comparable in quality to like SP recordings on VHS, which was alright quality-wise for the time, but VHSs were also a format you could record off TV on, so people were more likely to want to have a VCR in their house than a CED player. And of course, Laserdiscs were already out by the time CEDs actually hit the market, so there wasn't much point, because if you're gonna buy a large, inconvenient movie format, it might as well be the one that looks the best. And actually, by the time Ghostbusters was released on CED in '85, this was already a dead format as they had stopped producing CED players in '84. But as this kind of annoyed people that already had a CED player, to kind of appease them, they still kept making CED discs until '86. Now also in '85, but only in Japan, we had Ghostbusters on VHD. VHD stood for Video High Density, so it wasn't as redundant to say Video Disc VHD. This is also the first release we're looking at here that didn't just use the logo for their cover, but instead used the theatrical poster. Well, the poster for a lot of the overseas markets anyway, as the logo wasn't actually in behind them on the original theatrical poster, and this is the flipped European logo. Yeah, when Ghostbusters first came out, it's actually before this no symbol was actually in common use in North America. But when they decided to use it for Ghostbusters, they flipped it from how it normally was. And in Europe, they said, we don't like that, the no symbol has to be the correct way, so they flipped the Ghostbusters logo on releases there. Anyway, back to VHD. This is a format that's actually very similar to CED. And it was actually the colossal failure of CED which prevented VHD from appearing in all that many regions. The VHD format was made by JVC/Victor, and there were plans to bring this to North America and the UK at one point. But after the failure of CED, any plans to bring it to North America were cancelled, and it only ended up getting commercial use in the UK. So Japan ended up being the only area lucky enough to get home videos in this format. So unlike CEDs, VHDs actually did come with a little sleeve to cover the caddy. And I love that the VHD's caddy just kind of makes it look like a giant floppy disk. They were also extremely interesting on the backside. So yeah, the VHD did work almost the same as the CED, as you just stick the caddy inside the player, then it would grab the front part and the disc out, and then you just keep the empty caddy until you're ready to eject it. The actual vinyl disc inside the caddy was a little different with these two formats though, as the CED was grooved like an audio record, but the VHD was a grooveless vinyl. The stylus for a VHD player would just follow along the tracks electronically, which meant a little bit less wear, though still wasn't as good as a laser like with a Laserdisc. So VHDs just kind of fell somewhere in between CEDs and Laserdiscs and were kind of quickly forgotten. This also has the original price on it, and as you can see, movies on formats like this were pretty pricey, as this was 7,800 yen, which is somewhere close to around $78. One kind of neat thing about VHDs is I guess some of them had the soundtrack on there for you as well. And now let's move on to a format that most people probably didn't even know ever had pre-recorded movies put out for it, Video 8. And even though this one only has the Columbia Pictures logo on the front, it is still an RCA Columbia release. Though the year this 8mm tape of Ghostbusters came out was the last year any of them would be branded RCA Columbia. Because on September 28th of 1989, Sony bought Columbia Pictures. And after that, most Ghostbusters releases were branded Columbia TriStar. And it was also Sony that was trying to push the 8mm tape as a home video format. I guess Sony was giving up on beta a little at that point, since they were the ones also pushing that format. Most people didn't seem to think there's a big enough quality difference between SP recorded VHS beta and the Video 8. But honestly, comparing Ghostbusters on Video 8 to the VHS, it is a noticeably sharper image on Video 8. And even though the 8mm tape kind of disappeared very quickly as a home video format, it was very popular as a camcorder format. Meaning we can watch Ghostbusters as it was meant to be seen, through the viewfinder of a camera. Oh, way to crop Winston out of the photo on the Video 8 release, guys. Jackasses. Only 3 men! Wrong. I really do love the oddity of seeing a movie on this format, though. It's like, that happened? Really? And speaking of things that just seem amazing that they ever happened, it's Ghostbusters on VCD. The video CD was a pretty popular pirate format for quite a while, but there were things actually officially released on it. There were some regions where the VCD format was really popular, including the one where this came from, Hong Kong. You can see here the Hong Kong rating on it, which is Category 1, which is kind of general audience. They also have a little document scanned in here in the corner, which I guess is proving its rating, which, you know, that's really helpful. I can totally read that. So I at least know of one other area that got Ghostbusters on VCD, and that was the Philippines. The VCD uses one of the original taglines for Ghostbusters, the Supernatural Spectacular. That was used on the original theatrical poster, but that's almost never used these days, as they tend to stick with the "they're here to save the world" or "who you gonna call." And also, sometimes they're ready to believe you. The cover of the Hong Kong VCD is kind of funny in that it has, you know, the regular non-flipped Ghostbusters logo in the larger form, but then in the title, it's got it flipped the European way. I have a feeling the larger logo was probably meant to be flipped like the one in the title, especially as when this came out in 1994, Hong Kong was still under British rule. Kinda interestingly, their '94 release makes these the first release of Ghostbusters on a digital format. Of course, VCDs only held about an hour to 80 minutes max per disc, so usually to watch a movie you had to switch the disc at some point. Also, I gotta say, I really love how these discs look with the shininess and the 4 busters spread out between the 2 discs. That's much nicer looking than some of the DVDs. But of course, looking better is not something the VCD does with its actual video quality. The video on the disc is 352 by 240 with hard-coded Cantonese subtitles. Also, quite noticeably, for some reason, the picture on the VCD is much cooler than either the VHS or the Video 8s. Oh, and if you're wondering what's inside this insert, it's nothing! Woo! Supernatural spectacular! Then in 1999, we finally got Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2 on DVD. And these DVDs had one of my favorite covers for Ghostbusters 1 and one of my least favorite for Ghostbusters 2. I just really like how with this one they actually have all 4 Ghostbusters on it and even have Slimer flying off into the sky. It's a group shot from when they're about to fight Gozer, but I think this edit looks really nice. Then for some reason with the Ghostbusters 2 DVD, they used a picture which was clearly an alternate picture from when they were taking the photo for the theatrical poster of Ghostbusters 1. They did at least edit the patches on the jumpsuits to be the Ghostbusters 2 style, but that just makes me think more, why did they bother and not just use a promo picture from Ghostbusters 2? Was it because they wanted to edit up this nonsense action shot where they're clearly fighting the Scoleri brothers with their nonsense proton streams? If they wanted to use something a little different than the usual Ghostbusters 2 cover, why didn't they just use one of the pictures that included Dana Barrett in it? Or hell, look, the insert inside the DVD case has got a much better picture here with the 4 of them shooting their proton streams. What, would that one have worked too well? I just don't get having a Ghostbusters 2 cover that excludes Winston when he was usually there on those. But I guess the better and worse covers kind of reflect the quality of these 2 DVDs. Where the Ghostbusters 1 DVD was packed with a whole bunch of special features, the Ghostbusters 2 one got the usual filler crap to pretend that there is any actual special features like menus, languages, subtitles, the trailer, scene selection. None of these are special features. Yeah, this Ghostbusters 2 insert's pretty funny. I like how they inserted Dana Barrett, seamlessly into the Statue of Liberty shot here. Also, the Ghostbusters 2 DVD is a flip disc with widescreen on one side and full screen on the other. And now we have the kind of subset of DVD, which were known as Super Bit. The Super Bit DVDs of Ghostbusters were released in 2004 in Japan. Now, Super Bit DVDs weren't exclusive to Japan, but Ghostbusters on Super Bit was. So, what was the deal with Super Bit? Well, it's kind of in the name. These were DVDs that had the movie in a much higher bit rate than usual DVDs. So these Super Bit DVDs usually didn't have any special features on them since they were trying to save all the space of the DVD for a higher bit rate. So before the HD formats, I guess the Super Bit DVDs were kind of the nicest quality you could find for any of the movies released on it. These were pure performance DVDs. The Super Bit collection will set a new benchmark in high resolution until Blu-rays and HD DVDs. Next up in 2005, Ghostbusters hit UMD. UMD stood for Universal Media Disc, meaning it could be used in anything, except it could only be used for PSP. UMD video was another thing Sony thought would be a cool idea, I guess, and they put out a handful of movies for PSP. So the UMD is just kind of like a mini DVD housed within a little cartridge. And since it was a mini disc, its quality wasn't really as good as DVD, which is why people kind of quickly forgot about them. The UMD had the green slime background, which was like the 2005 DVD release, which I'll talk about more when we talk about all the different variations of Ghostbusters. Next up, Ghostbusters finally hit home video in HD on HD DVD! Yeah, I am of course lying. This never really happened. HD DVD is one of the few obscure formats Ghostbusters didn't actually get to be on, since Sony was behind the Blu-ray and they actually won this format war.
We got one!
So yes, in 2009, the real first way you could get Ghostbusters in HD was on Blu-ray. And then a little bit later, in 2014, for Ghostbusters, they started doing mastered in 4K Blu-rays, which were supposed to look a little bit better. These two releases look pretty similar, but looking at the actual movie, you can spot some differences between the 2009 Blu-ray and the 2014 one. The Blu-ray discs of these two releases are almost the same as well, just with a little mastered in 4K marking on this one. And if you thought that's where things ended, you're wrong, because now we've got 4K Ultra HD Blu-rays! I do like the covers for these ones, but I do also like that you can notice that this picture is almost the same one as the one they used for that Ghostbusters 2 DVD. Though they could have put a nicer shot of Winston somewhere on here than the back of his head where he's getting out of Ecto from a deleted scene. Also, the Slimer they show here is the exact same one they used for the 99 DVD. The Ghostbusters 2 cover is really nice, and I think is one of the first covers to actually include Sigourney Weaver, Rick Moranis, and Annie Potts. Though this should be the Ecto 1A, 0 stars. These releases give you the movie on regular Blu-ray and the Ultra HD 4K thingy, just in case you don't have something that can actually play those yet. Also, you notice something here? They've got the Euro flipped logo in the title, like the VCD. That's odd. This is a North American release, so I don't know why the flipped logo would be anywhere on here. Oh, by the way, the Ghostbusters 2 logo, that never gets flipped, just the first one. Also, my Ultra 4K Blu-ray of Ghostbusters 2 had something very important that my Ghostbusters 1 one was missing. A cover that shows the exact same cover. But look, this is rainbowy with this, so worth it! And that's pretty much all the formats that Ghostbusters has been released on to date. There is a possibility it came out on V2000 cassette and DVHS. But I haven't seen a picture of Ghostbusters on V2000, and the one picture I've seen of it on DVHS might have been a custom, because I haven't found any info saying that it was ever officially released for that format. So I hope you found this look at all the formats of Ghostbusters interesting. I found it pretty interesting, some of the weird formats that this movie's come out on. There's not going to be a ratings for this one because that doesn't really make sense to do so here. When we return to my ridiculous Ghostbusters movie collection, we'll be looking at all the different variants I got. So I've got my Ecto goggles, my PKE meter, and my ghost trap, but I feel like I'm missing something. Oh yeah, the Proton pack! Let's take a look at this! So here is the deluxe replica quality Proton pack put out by Spirit Halloween.
I am Halloween.
This is Ghostbusters Classic, which I guess is put on there for anyone who doesn't really know the difference between the newer Proton pack and the original one. So, as you'd expect from a Proton pack, this has some light up and sound features, and also the straps on it are adjustable. It's been quite difficult in the past to get a replica Proton pack at a rather decent price point. So it's pretty nice that you now have the option of the Spirit one for $70. My other Ghostbusters props are from the Matty Collector line, but they never put out a full Proton pack, just the Neutrona wand on its own. So let's see how much bustin' you get for your buck with this Proton pack. So straight out of the box we have two little pieces of bubble wrap on it, which I guess protected it to the max. Alright, stupid little sniffs about the packaging aside, this thing does look pretty good for $70. One thing that looks like it might be a little annoying with this pack is the stiffness of the cord connecting the Neutrona wand to the rest of the pack. I've heard some complaints about this Proton pack's color, the complaints mostly being that it's a little overly brown and not dark black enough, but I don't know, if I compare it with my PKE meter, it's kind of similar, and that seems okay to me. Now, yeah, I definitely know it's not perfect, but you're not going to get that for $70. I've seen some people take into painting up these proton packs and modifying them a bit to make them look a little more screen accurate, and that's a really good option if you want something much cheaper than a few $1,000 proton pack. But yeah, as I mentioned, the thing kind of annoying me straight out of the package here is just kind of how stiff this cord is. One other nitpick I guess I'd have is the placement of the speaker being so blatant right where the red lights would be going. I just feel like there probably could have been another spot on the pack to make it stand out a little less. There isn't a lot of painting going on with this proton pack, but we've got a lot of decals on here to fill out things like the danger and warning labels. Which is good because now I know to use only hydraulic pumps that have O-ring type and to grease the retention splines. And now I know what motivates the proton pack. I really love that they have the chippered minimatic valve detail on here, both on the pack and on the wand. Now, you can see some of the spots where they sprayed the silver on this thing kind of got a little overrun. There should be a pole running down from this part, which I don't remember the name of and probably has some purpose, but I don't know. I'm sorry, I guess I'm not a true fan. It's called the ion arm. One thing I do know is that this part of the proton pack is called the cyclotron, which is something I didn't know when I covered the real Ghostbusters episode Big Trouble in Little Slimer when they threw him in that giant chamber called the cyclotron. It kind of even makes less sense knowing that. So yeah, some details are missing, but we got a lot of the major things here, like the cords running across it and the ribbon cable over here. Again, some things like this ribbon cable aren't really perfect, but I mean, it's not that bad for a $70 pack. Seriously, the thing that's annoying me the most so far is this. Like, look at how annoying this cord can be while you're trying to just connect the Neutrona wand to the pack, and then you kind of got it doing a little loopy thing here, which is not really ideal. Maybe that's why they have the wand put on upside down on the box. And on the actual proton pack prop, the wand kind of slides in and off on grooves, which is a lot nicer than it pegging in like it does on this. Now the pack doesn't look very good from this angle. The actual proton pack prop's supposed to be like on an Alice frame and stuff, but of course you're not going to see all just this black felt when you're wearing it, so it doesn't matter that much. However, you will see the straps when you're wearing it, and these are rather dinky. I think they could have given us some straps that looked a little bit more like the actual proton pack straps, or at least just thicker straps that look like they would come on a more decent backpack than this. There's a little Velcro flap on this side, which when you open, you'll reveal the battery pack. So pop in 3 AA's and you're good to go. So to turn the battery function on the Spirit pack, you've got a simple on-off switch. That's obviously not exactly how it should go, but let's give its battery functions a go. So it's pretty cool. It's lighting up in most of the spots it should with the cyclotron and the blue light here, and of course it flashing from the wand. But all you have with lights and sound with this proton pack is while it's shooting. There's no startup or cooldown after you're done firing, which is kind of something I really wish was on here. Those sounds and like the just idling light while it just flashes the different red lights on the cyclotron are something I really wish were on here because it feels a little empty without it in a way. Now, if you leave it going long enough, there is a bit of a stop sound, but it doesn't really sound right compared to how the actual proton pack does. It'd just be really nice if it wasn't just so abrupt on and off, just instantly done. Now don't get me wrong, I think this pack looks absolutely awesome in firing the Proton stream mode, but I don't think it should have added any more to the cost to just have an on switch which would activate, just idle standard mode with the flashing lights and not really making any noise except maybe the when you turn it on, and then have another switch to activate the firing mode. So really, to me, the lack of an idle mode is the biggest downfall of this particular pack. I mean, that and the wand's a little small. So if you thought I wasn't going to suit up to try this pack out, I don't know if I'm quite ready to believe you. So when you're actually wearing the Proton pack, here's why having the sliding off wand is so much better than this peg thing. It's not as hard to get off, but trying to get it back on, quite annoying. Here's what it looks like when I'm standing here with my thrower. Man, I'm awesome, right? Shut up. So yeah, just kind of looking at me from the front with this pack on with just these straps is, one of the things that doesn't look nearly as nice about it. What I've heard is this pack is about 80% of a normal one, and I think the thrower is a little smaller than that. But I mean, overall, it doesn't look horribly undersized. I can say this thing looks really awesome in the dark, as long as you're shooting. Bye. The peg connector really is kind of an annoying issue with this, though, as I think you pretty much have to slide the pack off and peg it back on whenever you want to stick the wand back onto the pack. Also, it's quite easy to bump the on and off switch when you don't mean to. I know I keep complaining about the same thing, but the tension of this cord, kind of makes it flop in front of the pack on mine, at least, and it gives it so much tension on here, it'll easily pop the wand out sometimes, and then you'll bump the on and off switch and have it go off like you don't want to. But yeah, I do really like this pack, just it has some issues. Yeah, just screw that. Anyway. And again, this darn cord's annoying. A lot of this particular set is VHS related. Even the Blu-ray in this set is VHS related. Though I have a couple of things which are film related. So we'll start with the newest release in this set, which is this VHS-inspired Blu-ray. This Blu-ray is from the Rewind collection put out by JB Hi-Fi out of Australia. Now you might be aware of the VHS range Blu-rays put out by HMV, which this set was inspired by. The VHS range is really awesome and all, but it was missing Ghostbusters, so it's nice that this was in the Rewind collection. 19? What? The Ghostbusters Rewind Collection release is limited to 1,000 copies, and I got 545. And these releases give you a few goodies in there, which again is much like the HMV ones. First up, we got this iron-on fabric transfer. I love how this looks. It kind of looks like a flashy ad in a flyer or something for Ghostbusters. It's got a bunch of quotes from the movie and Slimer and Ecto-1. The collector card it comes with is just the same design that's on the cover of this Blu-ray. And unfortunately, it doesn't feature anything on the flip side. And the last thing it comes with is this large sticker with Ecto-1 and who you gonna call on it. Now for the Blu-ray itself, there's nothing really different on there or anything. It's pretty much the standard Ghostbusters Blu-ray release. But I just love that they're doing releases like this, and I love this kind of different design they put around the Ghostbusters logo and stuff here. And it's also neat how they did the wear pattern around the label like this. But who needs a phony wear pattern when I can have the real thing? So this is Turkish Ghostbusters 2. Or, I'm not gonna say this right, so complain at me, I guess. Hayat Vikilari 2? And it looks like this particular copy was a rental at one point, and it's not actually VHS, it's beta. I think it's kind of neat that at some point this beta tape was getting rented out in Istanbul by Giatan's Video or Giatani's Videos, something like that. And this beta tape was made by the Korean company SKC, which now just makes me think of our friend Power 5 since they were involved with that and had an ad at the beginning of it. On the inside of the red case, we've got the RCA Columbia International Video logo. And on the back, we have a studio logo that I don't think I've ever seen on a Ghostbusters release before. Yeah, on this Turkish Ghostbusters 2, we've got the Warner Brothers logo. I always find it interesting seeing some of these different logos on some of the international releases like this. Next up, we got Ghostbusters digitally remastered. This is just the VHS version of the 1999 DVD release. Though kinda interesting, on the top label of the actual VHS cassette, they call it the 15th Anniversary Edition, which I think is the only spot I've seen it called that. Now, I didn't go out of my way to get this version of Ghostbusters because it is just Ghostbusters on VHS and it's a cover I already have, but it came in a lot with this, which is something I was kinda interested in getting a copy of. This is the promo version of the Ghostbusters 2 VHS. In the corner, it has a gold stamp saying not for retail or resale, for promotional use only. It's also got this stamp on the side of the box as well. The actual tape is pretty much the same, but it does have this red sticker, again saying for promotional use only, not for sale or rental. And speaking of promo materials, I've got this red Ghostbusters bag. What's in it? Inside this bag came the promo version of Ghostbusters 1. It's not quite as fancy as the Ghostbusters 2 one with the gold stamp on there. And its sticker letting us know that this is a promo copy is the exact same one that was on the Ghostbusters 2 cassette. But I just love that it came in a weird lunch-looking bag. It's just kind of a weird little promo thing that I thought was interesting. With a wonderfully 80s-looking design around the No Ghost logo is this Las Cazafantasmas VHS from Spain. One thing I noticed while nitpicking this slip cover is the printing on the backside of it isn't all that clear. Worst cover ever! Not really, I love this design around the No Ghost logo. In fact, it reminds me of the Rewind Collection Blu-ray. But one of the oddest things about this slipcover is the VHS actually slides out from the top. I haven't seen too many that do it like that. Though if you're just carrying these slipcovers like this, this would prevent the tape from sliding out on you. And it's still Las Cazafantasmas. And the last cassette of this video is Os Cacafantasmas from Portugal. Yes, caca. I have one other Ghostbusters item with the Cacafantasma's name, though it's not Os Caca, it's just Caca. And that is the real Ghostbusters Fright Features Peter Venkman figure from Brazil. I find it kinda weird that on the back of the Os Cacafantasma's tape that they have the No Ghost logo just kinda randomly 3 times going down it. I guess it's one for each screenshot, but I don't know, it just kind of looks like they're randomly slapped on there. And I also like this certificate looking thing that was sealing the case at one point. The front label on the cassette is that same kind of certificate looking thing. And on the inside of the case, we've got Casablanca Video. And yes, much like the Turkish Warner Brothers one, I can say this is the only release of Ghostbusters I recall seeing put out by Casablanca Video. If you don't watch Os Cacafantasmas on VHS, you'll regret it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon, and for the rest of your life. I did it! I did a Casablanca quote! We got one! Next up, we have what is probably the closest I'll come to having Ghostbusters on actual film. These are displays which have frames from the 35mm film of Ghostbusters on them. I think all the shots in both of these displays are frames that come from the trailer, so that's possibly what they cut up to make these. Even though these displays were something I bought locally at a hobby shop, these originally came from the UK from a company called Film Cell. They call them mini montages and they're both numbered. This one's 89 out of 500, and the other one's 234 out of 500. And the last thing I want to show in this video is the Czechoslovakian theatrical poster for Ghostbusters. If you haven't seen this before, yes, this is seriously for Ghostbusters. Look, if you don't believe me, you can see Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Sigourney Weaver, Harold Ramis, Rick Moranis, and Ivan Reitman on it. Though, based on this picture, you'd probably think that this is some kind of weird expressionist art film. But I guess that's like the Proton pack. I don't know why it's on fire, and I don't know why his eyes are shooting out of his head. I guess he's really surprised that he has a water sprout nose that's trying to catch Chewbacca, which is a ghost, I guess. Yeah, there's really just a lot to take in looking at this, but I really do love it. The art for this poster was created by Peter Post in '88. I guess the Czechoslovakian artists didn't have a whole lot to go on when creating these posters for the movies, so they would just come up with stuff. Certainly made for some really out there things to promote these movies, but I am really glad this happened. I don't know why the Ghostbuster is so huge. I'm guessing this was some kind of interpretation from whatever they heard about the Stay Puft battle at the end. Those stylish boots are classic Ghostbusters gear, though. Isn't that right, Starfish, Chewy, Ghost thing? So what will this freak catch him with first? His water sprout or his fire pack? And is the water sprout nose strapped on? You seem like a weird movie, Duchov. What is flying out from the eyes, too? Is that tears? Why is there a weird star thing on his ear? And which Ghostbuster do you think this is supposed to be? Maybe this guy isn't doing that weird bug eye thing, and maybe this is Ray and those are the ecto goggles. I know, looks just like them, right? This is definitely the most bizarre cover that has ever existed for Ghostbusters. Even stranger than the one that calls it caca.
I guess he has seen shit that'll turn you white.
And, really, he is extremely white.
Watching, and we'll see you in the morning. M-A-G-A.